The Edge was fairly new in Hamilton. I'd only been going about 3 years. I had joined as the night jock there. Bud Ugly Bob, or Brian Reid, as we called him, Bud Ugly Bob, and he made no bones about that because he was, you know, an unfortunate looking fella. But he loved it. He really embraced that name. He was doing breakfast with JJ at the time when I was doing nights. JJ used to tell me stories about how he'd always say, "Don't worry, JJ, everything's under control. The whole show's sorted." And she's quite organised, so she'd hate that because she likes, you know, everything written out and everything sorted. And he'd just turn up in the morning and just make magic. We were based in Hamilton, and we were just a Hamilton radio station at that stage. The good thing with radio is that, you know, there'd be events that you'd have to go and do, singled out parties at the Outback Inn in Hamilton, and all the staff would come along and everyone would have a really good time, you know. We'd learn about each other, we'd drink, we'd have a good time. You know, we were all very supportive of each other. Knew everyone's girlfriends, boyfriends. It was good times. It was a Saturday. Bud Ugly Bob and I and my boss Leo were supposed to be opening a new timeout centre in Hamilton. I had turned up with Leo, my boss. Bud Ugly Bob nowhere to be seen, but that was usual, you know, he was a bit aloof. So everyone thought, I wonder where he is. We started doing the timeout opening. We rang Bob a couple of times, got no reply. So we just thought he must have had a big night. And we packed up our gear and we went back to work. And I always remember the poor part-timer on air on the Saturday. I was sitting at reception reading the newspaper after putting all the gear away. And she comes out to me and she goes, "Mike, I've got Bob's girlfriend on the phone. He's dead." I said, "What?" She goes, "I've got Bob's girlfriend on the phone. She's telling me he's dead." And, you know, I can remember kind of just hanging up the phone and sitting down on the couch again, trying to work out what was happening. When you hear those things, you don't kind of think it's real. So you kind of like need backup. So I rang Leo, my boss, straight away. And then he phoned the girlfriend and it kind of just, you know, started going round and round like that. On the Sunday afternoon, our CEO at the time, our big boss of the radio, he went into work and he recorded a little announcement. He just said, over the weekend, the Edge lost a really valued team member. Bud Ugly Bob will always be remembered for the fun things that he did on the air. Please give our staff time to grieve as we work through this, and appreciate your messages of support and condolences. And that played pretty much every 15 minutes maybe, like a commercial. The problem that caused was that we were quite a station known for pranks, so people, you know, for some unknown reason, a lot of people thought it was just a prank, which was a bit gut-wrenching, so it took a while for them to realise that it was actually happening. I guess for people that listened to the radio station, it was kind of the same reaction that I got personally, you know. It was on the news. I remember it being on the news on the Sunday night. I remember picking up the paper at the Waikato Times on the Monday and it was on the front page. I remember on the Tuesday walking down the street to get some lunch and I remember people looking at you and they had a real sense of sadness in their eyes. But they, you know, they wanted to say something to you but they didn't want to, you know, at the same time. I think I did want people to come and ask me because I think there was that utter confusion, you know. How can someone who on the Friday morning delivered a really amazing breakfast show and talked about surfing in the weekend end his life, take his own life, just like that? I think I wanted people to, you know, to talk to me about it and I wanted to talk to them about it so we could get on with some sort of normality in our lives. Because at the end of the day, we all had to go back to work, you know. The radio just doesn't stop. It was a you know, nice service and his family was there and work, I must admit, had done a great job in taking control of the funeral and flying the family up and, you know, really taking care of everything. And then we were out on the Friday night and I can remember there was like this queue of people formed at the pub. They formed a line just to come up and say, "Hey, sorry." And it was like, well, it's not your fault. It wasn't our fault. But yeah. And we all asked ourselves those questions, you know. Should have we noticed something at staff drinks on Friday, you know? Should have we made a, you know, bigger effort on the Saturday to get hold of him? But people are responsible for their own lives. I think people at our station dealt with it in two different ways. You could have either put on your brave performance face, your cloak, or maybe with the Edge there was a few people there that realised that it was maybe another connection you could have with your audience in terms of dealing with grief and dealing with the loss of a loved one and actually realising that that happens in life. For me, I maybe buried myself in work a little bit and maybe tried to get a little bit too involved to try and forget what was happening and then try and be happy again. I would have been early 20s, so, you know, I wanted to be there a lot at work just to, you know, keep the ship going, so to speak. We had a little office, and it was set up like, it was like a shrine actually, there was just flowers and things arriving all the time, sympathy cards, and they just kept coming, and we left them all there for that week. But I took it upon myself on the Saturday to clear it all out, because I thought, okay, we've had a week, everyone's coming back to work. Every time you walk past that office, you'd think about it again. I just did it without asking anyone. But, that was just, people dealing with grief, I guess. That was my thing. Not once over that week was it ever mentioned that he had committed suicide. I think the papers, the way that they word things made people realise what had happened. And apart from that statement saying that we'd lost somebody over the weekend, there was never really a flat-out statement that said exactly what had happened. We didn't have a discussion on the radio about what had happened and, let people call in or anything. I think it was sort of all done off-air, that sort of stuff. It makes you question what was going on in his head. It makes you question what was going on in your head. Were there signs that you could have picked up, Why on the Friday night when he said, I'll see you down at the pub, did I not go down and see him at the pub? You do all the if-onlys. If only we had gone round and got him out of bed on that Saturday morning to open time out, then, maybe any of that wouldn't have happened. So I think the grief becomes more of a, you kind of maybe feel responsible a little bit. We were quite popular with young kids, and, it's something you don't want them to even have to think about, I mean, if he had been hit by a car and died, I think even, that would have been unfortunate, but it would have been an accident. Suicide didn't feel like an accident to me. It didn't feel like it was that, It's like something you can prevent, I guess. For me, it made me far more aware of making sure that throwaway comments in my work colleagues' lives about personal situations were taken a little bit more seriously. And you can always laugh and joke with them at the time in the environment, but I'm the type of guy, no, but I do, and this is a reflection of what happened, but I'm the type of guy that would discreetly send a little email and go, that little dig before, are you okay, or, okay, so you're just broken up, are you sweet as bro, because I don't want that to happen again. The day that it happened and the day that news started spreading, we had a meeting point. We were told that if we wanted to, we were welcome to go to JJ's house, where everyone went, ironically, because everyone just wanted to be with each other. So that's important, have a meeting place. But I think being open to about funeral arrangements and stuff, talking to your staff about, the families, what's happening, what the family want as well. Because we made sure we did that, quite. I was really pleased with the company, they did. They talked us through the funeral arrangements. They were really blatant with what they said they were doing to help the family. Asked us for input into, anything if we wanted, stuff done. I think having a wake was really important as well, and work made sure that that happened. But then I think, the checks as well afterwards, like a couple of months afterwards, everyone needs to sit down. And they need to, they need to reflect on what's happened. Because, as I said, earlier, it's business as usual, That's the worst thing about it, I guess, is that everyone else is still going to go back to work the next day. So you can, you can forget in a couple of months that this, rather traumatic thing happened and you're sad about it. So it's good to come together and just make sure that you're not feeling responsible for it, and that you maybe do have some checks and places in your workplace where, you can see the signs. We make sure every anniversary of his death we do something, We mention him or we do something for him. I often think about where he'd be now in radio, because the edge certainly is growing, it's taken off that radio station, and we have a great time, and we're big, we're a big radio station. Would he be like another Paul Henry now? He was just that type of guy. He was very unique. In some respects, I don't think a lot of people realise the sort of intensity that you might have with a work colleague, because we were like a family, It is like a second family, especially when you're so young. Sadness is a thing I don't like, and I don't like seeing people sad. Because then I think, well, it's too late now, isn't it? We're all sad now, too late. I've been at that radio station now for 17 years, and a lot of people just have no idea that any of that happened. It'll be a part of our workplace forever, that situation. And we're a fun, happy, poppy radio station that makes people laugh every morning. So, for suicide to happen within your own ranks, I think really really made you realise that it can happen anywhere, anytime, any place. Doesn't matter what you're doing.